What impact on the Ethereum price do all those technical upgrades have? We recently got the Dencun upgrade, we got the merge. How did this actually impact the price? How did the dominance of Ethereum change? How did Ethereum perform relative to Bitcoin, for example? Let's have a look at the data most people aren't considering. So for example, we've got this over here. This is Ethereum relative to Bitcoin. So not the US dollar chart, but the Bitcoin denominated chart. What's the relative performance of ETH to BTC? And we can zoom out a little bit. At one point in time, you only needed 10 ETH to buy one Bitcoin. At another point in time, you needed 30 ETH. Now we are somewhat in a sideways trading range since April of 2021. And the arrow we see over here, that blue arrow is the merge. This is when Ethereum moved from proof of work to proof of stake. So Ethereum relative to Bitcoin did not do well since then. It underperformed by almost 40%, but we are getting pretty close to a very substantial support line. Now the Dencun update is all about layer 2s. It's all about the Arbitrums and the Optimisms of this world. They get reduced gas fees. Ethereum itself does not get reduced gas fees. Have a look at this. This is the number of users over time for Ethereum in blue, Arbitrum in turquoise, and Optimism in red. So Ethereum is still leading. Arbitrum has roughly half the number of active users. Unfortunately though, the market share seems to not really be growing in the last year. Here's the same chart, just in user dominance, pretty much constant since May of 2023. And since that upgrade is all about transaction fees, let's have a look at the transaction fees pre-upgrade. So of course the fees for Ethereum are dominating and they are recently rising because of all of the meme coin trading. The fees per transaction are much smaller for Optimism and Arbitrum. They are over here. The average transaction fee costs for Arbitrum are currently slightly lower than for Optimism. That will change though with that upgrade. Post-upgrade, Optimism will have way cheaper transactions. And so the main beneficiary in this upgrade might not be Ethereum itself, it might be Optimism. Maybe it makes sense to have a closer look at Optimism. Here's the number of investors that bridge funds over to Arbitrum every single day. It hovers around 300 to 400. Here's the same chart for Optimism. Much smaller, it hovers around 100. But maybe this can now change. Again, because transaction fees are heavily lowered for Optimism, much more than for Arbitrum. Here's a nice breakdown of the number of transactions on Ethereum versus Optimism versus Arbitrum. Maybe those red bars will get larger over time. But let's get back to Ethereum. What's the fundamental thesis of holding Ethereum? Most people think it's the idea of ultrasound money. It's the idea that the supply of Ethereum is shrinking over time. And there is some truth to this. Have a look at this. Since merge, the Ethereum supply went down, it shrunk. There's no mining, there's much more burning happening. And it's going down at a rate of 0.25% per annum. Without the change to proof of stake, without the merge, the supply would have increased by 3%. So there's a slight improvement, right? A bit over 3% because of that merge. But then that begs the question, why did Ethereum underperform Bitcoin that much? I believe it's because of this number here, the 7.7%. That's how much annualized the ETFs currently scoop up the Bitcoin supply. So the introduction of the Bitcoin ETF scoops up tons of supply, 7.7%. Plus, we've also got the merge. That's another improvement of 0.7%. So more than 8 percentage points demand versus supply improvement versus only a bit over 3% for Ethereum. So what does this tell us? It tells us that it's probably not the technical upgrades that will drive the Ethereum price. It's probably going to be an Ethereum ETF. If, however, we see that approval getting postponed time after time, which I believe is more likely, then probably we will continue to see some underperformance. Maybe not in the short term because we are already quite low. We could bounce off that support, but long term, as in the next months, potentially years, I believe the Bitcoin ETF demand will be in no comparison to what retail might be doing with some demand of Ethereum. Because that's a fundamental issue with Ethereum, right? You don't have that much upside potential because Ethereum is already large, but you do have your downside potential due to increased competition. We've got Solana, we've got Avalanche, we've got all kinds of chains that are coming out pretty much daily. So I might be picking up some Ethereum in case we hit that support, but I will not be holding long term. I simply believe Bitcoin is the better bet right now if you want to be somewhat risk off. If it's the first time here, feel free to subscribe. I publish videos regularly. A like would be very much appreciated as well. It helps the channel grow. There's also free Telegram. Link is down below.